In 1957, Vera Miles was set to become the next Grace Kelly. Then she got pregnant, and Alfred Hitchcock never forgave her. Now 95, she's finally revealing the dark side of Hollywood's most famous director. The controlling behavior, the cruel revenge, and the secret that made her walk away from fame forever. But that's not even the shocking part. Recent photos of the Psycho star have emerged, and fans can't believe what she looks like today. Vera Miles was born Vera June Ralston on August 23, 1929, on a farm near Boise City, Oklahoma. She grew up during the Great Depression, a time when families struggled to put food on the table. Her father, Tom Ralston, worked as both a preacher and an electrician, doing whatever he could to support his wife and 4 children. But life in Boise City was especially tough. The town was one of the hardest-hit areas of the Dust Bowl, where massive dust storms destroyed crops and made farming almost impossible. The Ralstons had no choice but to leave. They moved north to Kansas, searching for a better life. In Kansas, Vera spent her childhood in Pratt, before settling in Wichita. Her father eventually left for Alaska, leaving Vera, her mother, and her siblings to manage on their own. She learned early that nothing came easy. At just 14 years old, she took a job as a Western Union operator typist, working nights while attending school during the day. It was exhausting, but she had no time to complain. She needed the job to support herself. By 1947, she graduated from Wichita North High School, a school known for its strong community and striking architecture. Though she was still just a small-town girl, she was beginning to dream of something more. That dream took its first big step in 1948 when she entered the Miss Kansas pageant. She won, earning a chance to compete at the Miss America pageant in Atlantic City. There, she stood out among dozens of contestants, making it all the way to 3rd runner-up. That moment changed everything. Hollywood took notice, and she landed a contract with RKO Pictures, earning $125 a week. Today, that would be about $1,500 per week. It wasn't much, but it was a start. RKO was run by billionaire Howard Hughes, a man known for controlling every detail of his actresses' careers. He took a personal interest in Vera, enrolling her in acting classes and assigning a driver named Bob Miles to take her wherever she needed to go. At the time, studios shaped their young stars carefully. They staged publicity stunts, set up glamorous photo shoots, and gave them small roles to test their potential. Vera followed this path, appearing in minor films that didn't make her famous but kept her moving forward. Then, something happened that changed her life and her career forever. She fell in love with Bob Miles, the very driver Hughes had assigned to her. They married in November 1948. Hughes was furious. He saw it as a personal insult and immediately fired Bob. But he didn't stop there. He reportedly ordered that, from then on, all his drivers had to be homosexual, ensuring that none of them would ever date an actress under his contract again. Vera's time at RKO ended soon after. Hughes sold her contract to 20th Century Fox, and for a moment, it seemed like a fresh start. But just 6 months later, Fox dropped her. No official reason was ever given. Maybe they didn't see star potential in her. Maybe Hughes had something to do with it. Either way, Vera found herself without a contract and struggling to find work. Years later, she would joke that she had been dropped by the best studios in town. She was only 19 years old, newly married, and facing financial struggles. Bob wanted to go to law school, but they couldn't afford it. Vera had to take whatever acting jobs she could find, bouncing between television shows and small film roles while also raising their 2 daughters. Deborah Lynn was born on April 9, 1950, and Kelly Francis followed on November 5, 1952. The stress of balancing motherhood and an unstable career weighed on her, but she kept pushing forward. In the early 1950s, she got a role in a television drama called The Soil. Live television was a big deal at the time, and many young actors got their start that way. It wasn't a major production, but it gave her something more important, an entry point into Hollywood. Around this time, she made a practical decision. Her real name was Vera Ralston, but there was already an actress by that name. To avoid confusion, she started using the surname of her first husband, Bob Miles. Her role in The Soil led to small parts in other television shows and films. Hollywood producers were always looking for fresh talent, and Vera had something that stood out. Warner Brothers saw potential and signed her to a contract, giving her more opportunities in the industry. This was how many actresses in the 1950s got their break, starting in television before making their way into films. Vera followed that path, eventually landing roles in The Searchers, 1956, and Psycho, 1960. But before she became a Hitchcock leading lady, she was part of a very different Hollywood experiment. In 1953, when the movie industry was trying to compete with television, studios were pushing 3D films as the next big thing. Warner Brothers launched a promotional campaign, and Vera, still credited as Margot Miles, was named Miss Third Dimension. The title was mostly a publicity stunt, but it kept her in the spotlight. As part of the promotion, she posed for photos wearing the special glasses used to watch 3D movies. At the time, she was also being considered for the lead role in House of Wax, one of Warner Brothers' biggest 3D productions. But in the end, the part went to Phyllis Kirk. Losing House of Wax was a disappointment. The film became a massive success, and Kirk's career took off. Warner Brothers still gave Vera roles, but they were smaller ones, like The Charge at Feather River, 1953, another 3D film. If she had landed House of Wax, her career might have taken a different turn, but in the long run, it may have worked in her favor. While Kirk became closely linked to horror films, Vera's career took a different path. A few years later, Alfred Hitchcock would cast her in psychological thrillers, where she proved she could take on more complex roles. While her career was moving forward, her personal life was falling apart. Vera had married Bob Miles in 1948, back when she was still building her career. Bob was a stuntman and actor, which meant long hours on set and a physically demanding lifestyle. Vera, on the other hand, was focused on establishing herself as a serious actress. They had two daughters, Deborah Lynn in 1950 and Kelly in 1952. But by 1954, their marriage was over. The divorce was a turning point. Now, Vera could fully focus on her career without the added strain of a troubled marriage. Bob stayed in the industry, but he never became a household name. Vera, however, was just getting started. She would go on to marry 3 more times, but this first divorce marked the moment when her professional ambitions took priority. For actresses in Hollywood's golden age, balancing personal life and career was never easy. Vera had to make choices, and she chose to keep moving forward. In 1955, she starred opposite Gordon Scott in Tarzan's Hidden Jungle, an adventure film produced by RKO Pictures. It was a significant film for Scott, who was stepping into the role of Tarzan for the first time. Vera played Jill Hardy, a nurse working with a jungle doctor who gets caught up in a battle against poachers. The movie followed a familiar Tarzan formula, but behind the scenes, something unexpected happened. Vera and Gordon Scott developed a relationship during filming, and shortly after the movie wrapped, they got married. Their marriage lasted longer than the production, but not by much. By 1959, they were divorced. Tarzan's Hidden Jungle didn't do much for Vera's career, but it added another layer to her Hollywood story. She had now worked in adventure films, westerns, and thrillers. More importantly, she was proving she wasn't just another beauty queen trying to break into acting. Vera Miles first caught Alfred Hitchcock's attention in 1955 when she starred in Revenge, an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Her performance as a traumatized wife impressed him so much that he replaced another episode with Revenge as the series' debut. This was more than just a casting choice. It was a sign that Hitchcock had found someone special. By 1957, he signed Miles to a 5-year personal contract, positioning her as his next muse. Grace Kelly had just retired from acting to marry Prince Rainier III of Monaco, leaving Hitchcock without his signature leading lady. Publicity materials made it clear Miles was meant to be Kelly's successor. She had the beauty, the talent, and the elegance Hitchcock wanted. But there was a key difference. Unlike Kelly, who worked smoothly under his direction, Miles had a strong sense of independence. That difference would shape their relationship and, eventually, lead to its collapse. One of their early collaborations was The Wrong Man, 1956, a psychological docudrama based on a true story. Henry Fonda played Christopher Emmanuel Manny Balistrero, a musician wrongly accused of robbery. Miles played his wife, Rose, whose mind deteriorates under the stress of her husband's arrest. Her performance was quiet, yet deeply emotional. While Fonda's character remained composed, Miles showed the psychological toll the ordeal took on his wife. This contrast gave the film its emotional weight. Critics praised her work, calling it one of the most moving performances in Hitchcock's films. The realism in The Wrong Man was also unique for Hitchcock. The film was shot on location in Jackson Heights, Queens, and even used real-life settings from the case. Bernard Herrmann's score, unusually subdued for a Hitchcock film, emphasized the story's somber tone. Despite strong reviews, The Wrong Man struggled at the box office. At this point, Hitchcock was still committed to making Miles his next great leading lady. He involved himself in every detail of her image. She was only allowed to wear black, white, or gray, a restriction meant to align her look with his vision. Costume designer Edith Head worked closely with him to shape her wardrobe. Unlike Kelly, who accepted Hitchcock's control, Miles resisted. She had her own ideas about her career and how she wanted to present herself. This resistance created tension. The breaking point came when Hitchcock cast Miles in Vertigo, 1958. The role of Madeline Elster, Judy Barton, required an actress capable of playing two versions of the same woman, one sophisticated and elusive, the other raw and desperate. Hitchcock had big plans for her. He started pre-production with wardrobe fittings and screen tests, working closely with Edith Head to refine the character's look. Then everything changed. Delays in production pushed filming into mid-1957. During this time, Miles became pregnant with her third child. This forced her to withdraw from the project. Hitchcock did not take the news well. He had spent time and money preparing her for the role, and now she was stepping away. He reportedly complained about losing several $100,000 due to the recasting. Kim Novak replaced her, and Vertigo became one of the most famous films in Hitchcock's career. After this, Hitchcock lost interest in shaping Miles into a star. Though he cast her in Psycho, 1960, as Lila Crane, her role was secondary compared to what he had originally envisioned for her. Lila was a determined character, but she lacked the complexity of the roles Hitchcock had designed for Miles before their fallout. Some believe he cast her in Psycho more out of obligation than artistic intent. By the early 1960s, their relationship had deteriorated completely. Hitchcock honored the contract, but no longer actively promoted her career. While he focused on new leading ladies like Tippi Hedren, Miles moved on. In 1956, she starred in The Searchers, one of the greatest westerns ever made. She played Laurie Jorgensen, the love interest of Jeffrey Hunter's Martin Pauly. The film followed John Wayne's Ethan Edwards and Martin on a years-long journey to find a girl kidnapped by Comanches. While Wayne's character was consumed by vengeance, Laurie represented everything Martin stood to lose. In one of her most powerful scenes, she confronted him after years of waiting, her frustration boiling over in a speech that showed both love and anger. The moment was brief, but it revealed the personal cost of the film's central quest. The Searchers was shot in Monument Valley, Utah, a location famous in John Ford's westerns. It explored themes of racism, revenge, and redemption in a way that set it apart from other films of its time. In 1989, it was added to the National Film Registry for its cultural significance. For Miles, it was a career-defining role. She wasn't just a supporting character. She brought an emotional weight that balanced the film's intensity. 6 years later, in 1962, she reunited with John Wayne and John Ford for The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. This time, she played Hallie Stoddard, a woman caught between two men with very different visions of the West. Wayne's Tom Donovan was a rugged rancher, quiet but deeply in love with Hallie. James Stewart's Rancy Stoddard was an idealistic lawyer fighting to bring law and order to a violent frontier. Hallie's choice between them was more than just romantic. It symbolized the transition from the Old West to a more civilized future. One of the film's most moving moments came at the very end. Hallie placed a cactus rose on Tom's coffin, a quiet but heartbreaking tribute to the man she never truly stopped loving. Ford shot the film in black and white, emphasizing its somber, reflective tone. It became one of his most respected works, examining the way history sometimes buries the truth beneath legend. Miles gave Hallie warmth and strength, making her the emotional core of the story. Though she became well known for westerns, she was just as powerful in dramatic roles. In 1956, the same year she starred in The Searchers, she took on a very different challenge in Alfred Hitchcock's The Wrong Man. She played Rose Balistrero, a woman whose world crumbles after her husband is falsely accused of robbery. Unlike Hitchcock's usual thrillers, this film was based on a true story and took a stark, realistic approach. Miles had to show the slow unraveling of a woman pushed to her limits, and she did it with heartbreaking realism. Throughout her career, Miles worked with some of Hollywood's greatest actors. Her collaborations with James Stewart were especially memorable. In The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance and The FBI Story, 1959, they played characters whose relationships felt honest and lived in. Stewart had a unique ability to bring sincerity to his roles, and Miles matched that with her grounded performances. Their on-screen chemistry made their films even more compelling. Between 1964 and 1972, Vera Miles became a familiar face in Disney films. Her first role with the studio was in A Tiger Walks, 1964, where she played Dorothy Williams, a mother who fights to save a mistreated circus tiger. This was the start of a strong partnership with Disney, leading to 5 more films. She appeared in Those Callaways, 1965, Follow Me, Boys, 1966, Gentle Giant, 1967, The Wild Country, 1970, and The Castaway Cowboy, 1974. These roles often cast her as strong yet caring women, whether as a devoted mother or an independent widow. In Follow Me, Boys, she played Vida Downey, a small-town woman whose warmth made her a perfect match for Fred MacMurray's character. Disney gave her a chance to connect with younger audiences, but these films also showed her ability to take on lighter roles without losing the emotional depth that made her performances memorable. She had already proven herself in thrillers and dramas, but with Disney, she became known as a comforting, steady presence on screen. As she moved into the late 1960s and 1970s, her roles grew more complex. In Hellfighters, 1968, she played Madeline Buckman, the estranged wife of John Wayne's character. The role required her to balance strength with vulnerability, as a woman trying to rebuild a fractured relationship. Television also became a major part of her career. In And I Alone Survived, 1978, she portrayed Irene Elder, a woman stranded in the wilderness after a plane crash. In Helen Keller, The Miracle Continues, 1984, she played Kate Keller, a mother who refuses to give up on her daughter's potential. One of her most significant roles came in 1983, when she reprised her character from Psycho. More than 20 years after Hitchcock's film, Psycho 2 brought her back as Lila Crane, now Lila Loomis. This time, she wasn't just a determined sister looking for justice. She had spent years haunted by Norman Bates and was now a widow fueled by anger. She and her daughter Mary devised a plan to push Norman back into insanity, convinced he was still a threat. The film had mixed reviews, but it was a success, earning $34.7 million on a $5 million budget. Miles's performance added weight to the story, showing how grief and trauma could turn someone obsessive. Her return made the sequel feel connected to the original, proving she could still command the screen. Vera Miles won an Emmy for her performance in The Barbara Stanwyck Show, 1960 to 1961, a critically acclaimed anthology series hosted by Barbara Stanwyck herself. Each episode told a different dramatic story, and while the show struggled with ratings, it was praised for its strong performances. Miles appeared in one of the episodes and delivered a performance so powerful that it earned her television's highest honor. Winning an Emmy in the early 1960s wasn't just an award. It was proof that television had room for serious acting, and it showed that Miles could transition from major film roles to television without missing a step. This recognition placed her among the most respected actresses of her time and opened the door for even more television work throughout the decade. During this period, television was shifting. Strong female leads were becoming more common, and shows like The Big Valley, 1965 to 1969, were changing how women were portrayed on screen. Barbara Stanwyck played Victoria Barclay, the powerful matriarch of a wealthy ranching family, a rare kind of role in westerns at the time. Vera Miles wasn't in The Big Valley, but her television career ran parallel to these changing trends. She appeared in some of the most memorable shows of the era, including The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits. These series were known for their eerie and thought-provoking stories, and Miles fit right in. She had a talent for playing characters who were both strong and deeply complex. Even though she didn't star in The Big Valley, her work during this time reflected the same kind of commanding presence that made Stanwyck's role so groundbreaking. In 1964, Miles starred in an episode of The Outer Limits titled The Forms of Things Unknown, one of the show's most unique and unsettling stories. Her ability to handle psychological tension made the episode stand out, and it remains one of her most talked-about television appearances. Nearly a decade later, she played Vivica Scott in Columbo in the 1973 episode Lovely But Lethal. This time, she took on the role of a cosmetics mogul caught in a murder investigation, playing a character who was as sophisticated as she was ruthless. Whether she was in science fiction, mystery, or drama, Miles had a way of making each role feel significant, even when she was only in a single episode. Vera Miles made her final major film appearance in The Initiation in 1984. This slasher film, directed by Larry Stewart, placed her in a genre that was booming in the 1980s. The story followed a young woman tormented by recurring nightmares who, along with her sorority sisters, becomes the target of a killer during an initiation ritual at a department store. The film was shot mostly in Dallas, Texas, and while critics gave it mixed reviews, it later gained a cult following among horror fans. By this time, Miles had already reprised her role as Lila Crane in Psycho 2 in 1983. But The Initiation was one of her final big-screen roles before she gradually stepped away from acting. She had spent decades shifting between genres, from psychological thrillers to westerns, and even in her 50s, she remained a commanding screen presence. After a career spanning 5 decades, she retired from acting in 1995. Her last role was in the film Separate Lives, closing a career that had begun in the late 1940s. She had first entered the public eye through beauty pageants, winning Miss Kansas in 1948, and soon after, she made her way to Hollywood. Over the years, she worked with legendary directors like Alfred Hitchcock and John Ford, building an impressive body of work. Unlike many actors who struggle to step away, she left on her own terms, choosing privacy over prolonged fame. Her personal life had its share of ups and downs. In 1956, she married actor Gordon Scott, who had just become the new Tarzan. They met on the set of Tarzan's Hidden Jungle, where she played his love interest, and their romance quickly led to marriage. They tied the knot on April 14, 1956, in a civil ceremony in Yuma, Arizona. Shortly after, they adopted a Korean War orphan, reflecting their shared desire to build a family. But their marriage was not as ideal as it seemed. Scott's rising career took him away frequently, and by the late 1950s, tensions had grown. After 3 years together, they divorced on March 2, 1960. Miles was awarded custody of their son Michael, who was born in 1957, while Scott continued his career in Europe. That same year, her career took an unexpected turn when she lost the lead role in Vertigo. Hitchcock had signed her to a 5-year personal contract, seeing her as his next leading lady after Grace Kelly retired. She had already begun pre-production for the film, even posing for promotional photos. But when production delays clashed with her pregnancy, she had to step away. Hitchcock replaced her with Kim Novak, a decision that changed the course of Miles's career. Though Novak gave an unforgettable performance, many have wondered how different Vertigo might have been with Miles's more grounded acting style. This also created distance between her and Hitchcock. While they worked together again on Psycho, she never regained the position of being his preferred leading actress. Her personal life moved forward when she married actor Keith Larson on July 16, 1960. Their son, Eric, was born on April 30, 1961, and, for a time, their life seemed stable. Larson embraced his role as stepfather to Miles's 3 children from her previous marriages, and they settled into family life. But over time, their relationship faced challenges. Their careers pulled them in different directions, and by November 1969, they had separated. Miles filed for divorce, citing extreme cruelty, a common legal term at the time. Their marriage officially ended in October 1971, after 11 years. They evenly divided their assets, which totaled $231,471, and agreed on child support for Eric. After leaving Hollywood, Miles settled in Palm Desert, California, far from the public eye. She had always valued her privacy, avoiding interviews and public appearances, and retirement only deepened that choice. Unlike many of her peers, she never wrote a memoir or took part in Hollywood nostalgia events. Even when Jessica Biel portrayed her in the 2012 film Hitchcock, Biel had to rely on stories from Miles's grandson, rather than speaking with the actress herself. Some believe her reluctance to discuss her career came from her complicated experiences with Hitchcock and the pressures of Hollywood. Others think she simply preferred a quiet life. Whatever the reason, It added to the mystery surrounding her legacy. Miles left behind a body of work that spoke for itself. And when she walked away from the industry, she did so with no regrets.